Island that maybe Rhode Islanders don't see, that you are central. You can draw from Connecticut, you can draw from Massachusetts. This is an economic benefit. What's our risk? Our risk is that we're going to take a small portion from a federal highway program over the next 10 years that we get $1 billion on, and we're going to take something to the tune of 50 million or $5 million a year. What's the upside potential? 3,000 construction jobs right off the bat, 15 to 1,600 permanent type jobs, $75 million tax revenues flowing into the state, 16 million flowing into the city, an endowment for the University of Rhode Island once the bonds are paid off. That, to me...
If everything works out, undoubtedly it would be
a risk? Is it a risk? Yes.
But I think you hit on a point there. I think a lot of people are concerned that it could possibly become another white elephant that the Rhode Island is so famous for, starting with the Masonic Temple up across from the State House itself. There it sits. Well, since 1928.
You say white elephant. One of the chief critics is the people down in Warwick.
Yes.
But the person who built the mall down in Warwick next to a mall that already existed didn't have any problem with on-off ramps and on and off ramps with competition. That's called competition. In other words, if there's a shopping center built in the center of the city of Providence, they've got to compete. And that's what business is all about, is competition. It's a public-private partnership. Is it worth the risk? You got to say, well, suppose we don't do it. How many other people are lined up to come into Providence? There's no short list. There's nobody. This was an innovative approach, controversial, certainly. But, you know, from my office in the State House, I look out over the skyline in the city of Providence, and I see a lot of dreams out there that are now reality.
I see a lot of difference from years ago.
I certainly do, and the city is coming alive again, and I think this is a major benefit to it. I realize it's controversial, but if you're asking me, do I support it, the answer is yes, and I think that he could get behind it and certainly benefit Rhode Island, because he's an economic developer in northern Rhode Island. That's where he tried to do economic development. Now he's the common denominator as governor, and I think he should continue that to be the chief cheerleader, if you will, of economic development.
Okay, thanks. Sticking with the controversial issues, the casino gambling. This is an ongoing saga, as you well know. Now, Senator, isn't it time Rhode Island received its share of that juicy pie? In other words, people are saying we should wake up and smell the coffee and not trying to fight this at every turn. We see every day, every other day, where the Pequots down there in the Foxwoods Casino in Ledyard, these millions of dollars that they're not just making for themselves to better their lot as a Native American tribe, but to contribute to the economy of the state of Connecticut. Shouldn't Rhode Island get some of this and let the Narragansetts build it with all of this interference that's out there by a lot of people? Shouldn't we get a share of that rather than sending it down there?
Well,
they're going to gamble.
The stats that came in prior to the referenda question very clearly showed that Rhode Islanders favored gambling. Very clearly showed that if people are going to gamble, we should get our fair share. The people in Rhode Island have spoken. It's their state, and overwhelmingly have rejected it. Now, again, maybe too many questions were on the ballot. I mean, the only thing I think positively we should do is I think we should begin to look at a gaming issue legislation which we do not have on the books. Personally, should they have the choice? Yes. It was put on the ballot. It was a resounding no, and the people own the state. If that's what they choose, that's what they choose, and that's democracy.
Just as an example, the other day out in Bristol, the community of Bristol, you probably saw the article, and maybe you didn't. Evidently, a group of senior citizens were going to be sent on a trip down to Ledyard, and they were all looking forward to it. And a councilman in Bristol objected to it. He said, well, this would show that we advocate gambling if we let them go down there on a sponsored by the town trip. Now, wasn't that taking it a little bit too far? These people were looking forward to it. They like to gamble.
Now, that to me is
nothing wrong with it.
That to me is legislating morality. I mean, you know, the one thing about a senior citizen, they haven't lost their senses. I mean, they still have the same mind and same intelligence that they had growing up. For people, political people, I know sometimes think they have all the answers, and they haven't. And maybe sometimes they should listen. And if people want to go down and gamble, that certainly is their right. And I think it's a kind of a big brother attitude for any councilman or any senator or any representative or any governor to say, I don't think this is right, and therefore I will decide what is morally right and morally wrong. And so in that instance, I didn't see it, but I totally disagree with his position.
But what do you predict is going to happen? What's your thinking?
What I think that you're going to see the gambling issues come back again and again and again.
Yeah.
That's my sense, only because there's an awful lot of people who do want gambling. My position has always been it's the people's right to decide. But is the issue going to go away? I don't think so.
You don't see the Narragansetts building, apparently by federal law, a casino on their tribal lands in the relatively near future?
They can, Glenn. But I think, what are you looking at? You're looking at a giant bingo hall down there because the Class 3 Federal Gaming Act says, in effect, that they can only, and I realize it's a court case now, but that they can only mirror whatever Rhode Island has. We don't have crap tables. We don't have roulette tables. We don't have blackjack tables. To go down and build a giant hall in an area that's very difficult to get to, I don't think economically is going to make sense. Is it their right? Of course it's their right. That's federal law there. But I think that what they wanted was that approval in Rhode Island to expand gambling, and Rhode Islanders at this point in time apparently don't want to do it.
Okay. Before we get away, there's a couple of things that I'd like to fit in before time elapses. Governor wants to intrude, if that's the correct term, on legislative powers in the form of eliminating the practice for the legislature to appoint people to boards and commissions. What do you think about that?
I'm absolutely opposed to it, but let me tell you why. The only voice that the people in this state have on any board or commission, you're talking quasi-boards, the Narragansett Bay Commission, the Lottery Commission, and things like that, the only voice that they have and the only accountability factor are the senators and representatives who they elected. The only way they can find out what's going on are through those elected representatives. Remember, there was a 23% pay raise that was going to be given to the lottery director. I replaced the senator who was my appointment immediately. We knew about that because of legislators being on quasi-boards. When the Mall of New England was going to use bond money, it was the legislators who voted against it and forced the hand of the quasi-body not to do it. The problem is, if there's a problem raising money, like bonding, attack the issue, not the messenger. So if you have a thing like the Narragansett Bay Commission who wants to raise $4 million, you put laws in, like are on the books right now in legislation, which is going in, that says anything more than $1 million must come back to the General Assembly, be publicly debated and publicly voted on. Those are the problems that you've got to solve. Replacing legislators is not going to solve anything because you're going to have the same problems you presently have.
Senator, once again, with the minute or two that we have left, although it doesn't directly concern the Rhode Island General Assembly, it concerns the Rhode Island people, and I think your views would be well held by our viewers. I want to talk about the disturbing plans to a lot of people's way of seeing things, particularly the elderly and the blue-collar worker and the people in middle class. The structure down in Washington, namely, the structure is one or two people, namely Newt Gingrich and this contract with America. Basically, we see where the school lunch program will end, the AFDC program will end, and they'll be replaced by block grants. Now, that's fine, the money will be coming in, but there is no requirement that these monies be funneled into those two situations. Just for openness, what do you think about this particular thing? I know you don't care for it, but I'd like to...
Well, there's bad news and good news.
Yeah.
The bad news is that Newt Gingrich is Speaker, and the good news is that Newt Gingrich is Speaker. No one man has all the answers. And this contract with America is already beginning to come apart. First of all, they talk about... I look at the sincerity of the person doing it. They talk about term limits.
Yeah.
In the very next breath, he says, well, that doesn't mean the people who are here now. So this is like, we keep our position and we set a new set of standards for everybody else. Public broadcasting. We don't like public broadcasting. Now, 7/8 of America may like public broadcasting. And it's
but
certain,
they don't. So
but they don't, and Newt Gingrich decides, well, I don't want it, and you got to get out there and compete. And they oversimplify very complex problems. When you start getting into the area of Social Security, there are people who live on that. That is their lifeline. And all of a sudden, we start to talk about the amount
Medicare
of money.
cuts. I see people biting their nails,
Exactly.
not to interrupt you.
And
They're frightened over this prospect.
Because you can take people who are elderly, who've worked all their lives, and all of a sudden this new messiah comes along in the form of Newt Gingrich, who has all of the answers, and he starts to look at them and saying, look at these people. They're making all this money on Medicare. I mean, now you have to define the role of government. Mm-hmm. Is government to help people? And if it is, then helping the elderly, whether it's Social Security or Medicare, is something that I think our taxpayers and our tax dollars are put to good use on. This man decides, well,
all entitlement programs.
Entitlement programs are out. Everything isn't a dollar and cent. I mean, it's one thing, there are certain issues that transcend dollars and cents. There are certain issues that should be moved to one side to protect the elderly, because the elderly are on fixed incomes. And apparently this guy doesn't care. So therefore I say, the bad news is he's speaker, and the good news he's speaker, because people who seem to have all of the answers, history has recorded, usually self-destruct. And, I mean, I can already see it between Bob Dole in the Senate and him with this confrontation beginning to develop. So I don't think that he has all the answers, and I don't think ultimately people will support him.
We'll look forward to the progress. Thank you for joining us. We are out of time, and look forward to another session down the road.
Always a pleasure to be on this show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My special guest has been the Rhode Island Senate Majority Leader, Paul Kelly. We do thank you for looking in. I'm Glenn Russell, and I'll see you next week.